the workshop was called Puppets Through the Child's Eyes because I thought, as a certificate course director, I think that you don't get enough of puppets, and I think that the part of the toolkit that isn't quite understood. There's not enough research out there on puppets. They're not used much in the toolkit, and I thought they're my favourite part of the toolkit. Although they're not used as much, I've had some really amazing cases with them that I thought, actually, I want that to come alive. I want people to understand what puppets are all about. So I think it can be both. It can be the character itself, so you're putting something into a character. But when a child creates a puppet, or when an adult creates a puppet, it does that third dimension. So it allows it to go one much step further. So it's like they've put themselves into the creation and then the creations come alive. So it just allows it to be a safer way of portraying a character, which often the clients or the adults don't realise they're doing until we start reflecting on it and wondering on it and noticing on it. So that's what I want to do. But with the workshop itself, I looked at core emotions, because I think actually how much you can convey through a puppet of just one emotion, we're missing. And anything can be a puppet. And then we talked about actually colours that came up that were different for some people. So we had red with anger, and she was like, well, obviously it was going to be anger. But then another person had red for joy. And so then we talked about that as well, and actually until the child tells you, we don't actually know. I think where the love for puppets has, for me, come from is that I had a child that was referred, she must have been about 6 or 7, and she was dyslexic mute. So she was referred to me for that. And she used to come in for weeks and weeks, and she used to pick up the same character, which was this bunny rabbit. She would never talk. Then suddenly the rabbit had this voice. But it was quite obvious that it wasn't her voice, it was the rabbit's voice. And then the rabbit started to interact with other parts with this voice, started to interact with me with this voice. And then after weeks and weeks and weeks of her being this rabbit character, she took the puppet off and she said, I can show you my voice now. And it was just magic. And then we got kind of, so yeah, I must have seen her in year 2. And then in year 6, I was still at the school, and she took on the main role of the play. And she suddenly had this voice, and I welled up and I cried. And I was like, what's wrong, Dash? And I was like, she didn't have a voice, and they could not believe, those that were new to the school, that this child that had no voice suddenly had the role of the play. And I believe that was because the puppet allowed us to do it. Yeah, I think just don't be scared to use a puppet. I think sometimes people think, oh, how can we reflect as a puppet? How can we be a puppet? But I think just be you. I've tried to explore in the workshop that actually you are the puppet. The therapist is that character. And so you can take it, and it's just such a beautiful way for a child to go through difficult stories through a puppet.
And finally, is there anything that the puppet wants to say to camera?
He just says thank you. He says thanks for being on camera.